all these rejections from the middle Bollinger Band.
Resistance we're going to need.
If you actually see here, we get a
And we'll look for a healthy higher
I
low.
would not
don't have
be
the
convinced
pullback
to
to
enter a long trade.
Hello crypto friends, hope you're doing well. We're going to look at Bitcoin, Ethereum Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash on all kinds of time frames. We had a bull break, made a tweet earlier today and said that the range was getting extremely tight. We're looking for a break sometime within the next 2 days. That break ended up happening about 4 hours later. But there's one thing that has been happening over the last 5 days. When the bulls show up, it is very, very briefly in these little spurts. And if you look at the 1 minute time frame here, we literally had 4 minutes of bull volume and then 3 minutes of bull volume, and that's it. So 7 minutes of significant bull volume led to this on the hourly time frame in terms of some huge bull candlesticks. So it's a scenario where we're so illiquid and there's such a lack of volume that these huge volume surges are coming through. They're triggering some shorts, not a whole lot of them, shorts having to cover that is, but it's hard to trust these moves as sustainable. So one thing, another tweet that I made is what I need to see happen on the hourly time frame is for the bulls to establish healthy consolidation after one of these breakouts and then see follow through. Because if we look at the hourly time frame, we've had a bull break, big bull spike on the hourly, no follow through, we pull back, another big bull break, then we fade for day after day, another big bull break, no follow through, and we fade. So here's another big bull break. The question is, can we establish a higher low, cool off the RSI a little bit, and then see continuation? Because we have not seen that kind of move, which shows confidence. That kind of move shows confidence in the bulls holding their positions, where the slow fade shows bulls locking in profit and bears jumping in. And on these moves, we know the bears are continuing to jump into positions, and we have a really good gauge of that in the chat room with a nice sample size of traders where, I'm not sitting there telling anybody to do anything. And there's a bunch of shorts re-entering positions because hourly RSI got over 80. The daily is rejecting from exponential resistance, this 12 period. So let's look back historically here on Bitcoin over the last month. Look at every bounce attempt that hits the 12 period exponential resistance. We have 3 very clear rejections from those levels, and here we are hitting them again. So bulls still have to prove themselves. They just got through proving themselves earlier today, but it's still not enough for the bulls. Again, it's the psychology and the sentiment that has to change. We have to have bulls convinced to hold their positions and shorts convinced to not establish positions. And once we start seeing significant follow through, bears don't have anything to worry about right now in terms of establishing top fishing plays. And a top fishing play is when you go short and you set your stop loss in case there's continuation and then hope for a pullback. And that's a very low risk trade that has been playing out time and time again. So the bears are going to keep jumping in as long as that keeps happening. So overall, where do we stand? The weekly time frame is trying to see a bit of a bounce. The weekly trend is not going to change anytime soon. The last lower high on the weekly was $9,948. Here we are currently about 50% below that level. Not exactly, maybe 45%. So we have to see, in my opinion, for this weekly trend to change, a bounce, a lower high, a higher low, and then a higher high. Otherwise, it's still just a lower high pattern. That being said, the bulls can have some nice gains on that bounce. If we bounce up and set a lower high at $8,000, that's a significant move, a 20% move from where we currently stand right now. So bulls getting a little bit of opportunity. Had some people entering trades based off of the alert system firing off and also just based off of stop buys triggering. I had a very small position stop buy trigger, but it's the kind of scenario where I want to just keep locking in short-term gains because, again, I'm a perfect example of a bull that is not comfortable holding. I want to lock in the short-term profit while I have it until the bulls prove things to me on a longer-term time frame. And so the longer-term time frame proving it to me is going to be the daily chart getting over these exponential resistances, and then we see a cross of these exponential moving averages and a bull cross. Last time we bounced, we saw the tight equilibrium pattern. We saw a huge bull break. This is a smaller, shorter equilibrium pattern and a smaller bull break so far. And then we got the bull cross of these exponential moving averages, and that led to another 3 weeks of upside. So I'm looking for a bull break and a cross of these exponential moving averages to begin to shift this momentum more significantly. Otherwise, until then, I'm going to still be protective and lock in short-term gains because, again, it's small profit, but no, we're not going to go broke if we keep locking in small profit while we patiently wait for the longer term setup. So where we stand right now, the hourly time frame, the range is resistance of 68.07. And support is going to be down at the low of consolidation at this point. That's down at 66.70. So that is our range to be watching. The 15-minute time frame giving us a potential equilibrium to be watching with our low. We'll bounce and maybe we'll set a lower high. But keep an eye on this 15-minute chart. And again, we can go back and compare it. What happened other bull breaks on the 15-minute time frame? We set our low, we came up and set a lower high and then a lower low, and that's where the momentum shifted. So the question is going to be, do we see that same shift of momentum back towards the bears, or can the bulls do anything with this overnight? And we're going to have to see continuation overnight for the bulls to prove to us that they do have strength and follow through. All that being said, even if the bulls right now make their way back up into the mid to upper 6,700s, again, this hourly RSI is still pretty high, and it will very quickly be back over 80. So we do have to be cautious of that as well. 4-hour RSI still has room to the upside, but some of these shorter-term RSI levels still a little bit high, especially when you look back and say, wow, this is the highest the hourly RSI has been since back at 8,500. So that's what we're keeping an eye on. Again, the need for follow-through. 7 minutes of bull volume is not enough to be convincing. So where does Ethereum stand? Ethereum and Litecoin are weaker than Bitcoin. And the reason for that is that we did not break the high of the bounce at this point. So we have the low on the daily, the high of the bounce, and still a lower high by $5 on Ethereum. So I did end up getting a stop trade, a stop buy triggered into Ethereum. And I used, again, a very small position because stop buys have not been favorable in this trading environment. But I was in a position a couple of days ago. I really liked my entry, but ended up stopping out while I was traveling and wanted another shot at a piece of the bull break if it did happen. And it did happen in a very quick spurt. So again, quickly locked in that profit. So we had a 4-hour equilibrium, the high, low, lower high, higher low, tightening range. Inside bar bull break was 497.78 on the 4-hour time frame. And the clear bull break for me was 502 was the level I was watching because the hourly chart had 4 tops at 502. So that's where my order triggered in because I assumed if 502 is going to break and we have stop buys triggering, the odds that 507.83 breaking, those are going to be high odds. So on Ethereum, again, the difference is the daily resistance still stands. Same thing though, daily 12-period exponential, we're rejecting right from it. That being said, Ethereum historically has gotten over the 12-period a bit more consistently than Bitcoin has. So I'm not as, strict in terms of my analysis or trade game plans with this 12-day exponential resistance as I am on Bitcoin. So looking at the hourly time frame, we have the high of the breakout of 525, the low of consolidation of 513.10, and we're going to look to trade around within this range into this evening, into tonight. Volume dropping off. Same thing with the volume spikes on the minute time frame being very brief, and hourly RSI has cooled off a little bit more here. So 15 minutes establishes support. Again, it looks very, very similar to Bitcoin. When this volatility and volume picks up, those correlations pick up as well. So same setup, just a little bit weaker because we have not broken 530 on the daily time frame. Bull MAC decross is also on the daily time frame for Ethereum and Bitcoin to be watching if we can see some follow through. Litecoin on the daily, same thing as Ethereum, even weaker though, as we didn't even get within 3% of breaking to the high of the bounce. So our new daily support level is 92.79, and resistance is going to be up at 103.06 if the bulls want to get follow through. Same thing on the hourly. We have our high of resistance. That's going to be up at 99.50. Our low of consolidation is 97.81, and trading within this tightening range. 15-minute time frame, a little bit tighter than the other two. Little double bottom here and trying to break for continuation. Hourly RSI, not as overbought. So because we have not seen as much strength, the RSI levels are not as significant, are not as overbought, I should say. So overall, very, very similar. And look how far we are from 12-period exponential resistance on the daily here. That level's up at 103. So again, about 4% away from the exponential resistance that both Bitcoin and Ethereum are currently hitting. Checking in on BCH on the daily time frame, same thing, has not broken the high of the bounce yet. That level was up at 907.99. So Bitcoin's standing out. BCH also had a bear break just before the breakout happened. Obviously not much follow through there, but the bulls have to break 908 to be looking up at the 12-period exponential resistance. We're not touching that level yet as well. Hourly chart is still consolidating from the high of the breakout. That high is up at 899.41. So we could essentially call that $900 psychological resistance. And we're looking to build a base of support, currently 882.70. 15-minute time frame, looking pretty similar to the other names. And actually, I would say 878.42 is the low of consolidation. That's the important support level. So nice channels to be watching for sideways trading. If we get it'll tell us very clearly overnight whether it's a bull break or a bear break. I like this 15-minute time frame for all of these names for clarity of this sideways trading. Continue to check the daily chart and where the exponential resistances stand, and continue to check the hourly chart and where the RSI levels stand. Because again, if we do get a bull break, that hourly RSI is going to get overbought pretty quickly. So Bitcoin is definitely standing out in terms of the three because it did break to a higher high on the daily where those other names did not. And it's definitely a shift in short-term momentum. We saw the volume continue to drop off, a clear bull spike in that volume. And the question is, it's all about, can we get over these exponential resistances and see a more significant bounce follow through for this weekly time frame to get a bounce and look to set a lower high. And we'll have the weekly exponential resistance to keep an eye on. So again, it's the same thing where we're looking at one time frame. If we can make a check mark and say, all right, we've broken over exponential resistance on the 15-minute, we zoom out to the hourly. If we do it on the daily, now we have to zoom out to the weekly. And we're going to continue to do that until the bulls have all exponential moving averages as support on all these time frames, which will be a very monumental day for the bulls and a sigh of relief once that finally follows through. So again, everybody gets these, glimmer of hope just watching around social media when these moves do happen. And that's absolutely worthwhile. But the fact that we're not seeing any follow through on the 1 minute time frame or any significant, sustained buying is what I'm looking for essentially. And if this buying is happening in spurts, it's not sustained buying. So it's really leaving me wondering, when's the sustained buying going to come in? That's essentially what I'm looking for. So overall, there's definitely some positive news events out there. We obviously know about the Bitcoin and the Ethereum not being labeled a security. We had New York just approve some Bitcoin trading. That's definitely going to be a positive as well. As long as there's just these little stories, as long as there's no FUD, these little stories can only help the bullish momentum. And we just had Square. So it was that the Cash App through Square, and Square is a publicly traded company. So Square is hitting all-time highs. Again, more than one way to play this space. Square on the daily time frame. Look at this chart. Big time blue sky breakout. And here just in the past few weeks, we're up well over 20%. So Square responding well to the cryptocurrency news where now they're approved with their Cash App to be trading in New York, and keeping an eye on the blockchain names as well in the space. But really the action is definitely muted compared to what we've been seeing. But SQ is the most significant bullish the bullish cryptocurrency name in the stock market right now that we're keeping an eye on. So that's something to watch as well. And again, even if you aren't trading it, just keep an eye on it and practice your technical analysis and see how it plays out and see if it is in line with, what you're used to in cryptocurrency. And the answer is it very most likely will be. So that's where we stand as we head into tomorrow. Nice 15-minute channels to be watching. We'll see how we break. I personally am not rushing back into an entry again because I'm still being very skeptical of the bulls. They are proving us step by step, little by little, but it's not enough for me to be comfortable in full positions. It's not enough for me to be comfortable holding any kind of swing positions at this point. So we'll check back in tomorrow and see which direction we break from this channel. I appreciate you watching. For today's Do Good Things, let's see. I'm getting my mom off Diet Coke, so I bought her a water filter and water bottle and all that stuff. And it just made me think about how a lot of times people know what's good for them, but they lack just this little push of motivation to get it done. So I'm hoping that, getting my mom these things and not having, she would have to go out and get these things and start being active. But if I'm getting her these things and they're a gift and now she opens them and says, like, oh, I need to do this now. You got me these things. Or it could be as simple as, when you have a gym buddy friend and you go to the gym more because there's two people that it's a little bit of extra motivation. So let's see if there's people in our lives that, want to do something and it would be something that's beneficial for them in terms of health or whatever, and give them that little push of motivation to make the initial step. Because it's that first step that's the hardest, because humans are creatures of routine and we need to break that routine in order to establish new routines. And so a little bit of help doing that can go a long way. Appreciate you watching. See you tomorrow.